Okay, did we have any leftover questions from last week or regarding the story? We got through a decent chunk of it in our last class meeting. We're on page 825, and my notes say we had finished with line 75. Noah, does that look right to you? Noah nods. He's not even on the right page.
It's a line of pathos.
Pathos, yeah. Oh, how unlike the place from whence they fell. Did you guys, did anyone make use of either the YouTube or the translation?
I did the translation.
It cracks me up. Like, there are these huge blocks where there's nothing, and then it's just like, that sucked.
Oh, it was like...
And that translates like 7 lines.
It was like, come on, sit down and have a beer.
I thought that was pretty good. I'm glad that some people enjoyed it. All right, well, let's pick up at line 76. There the companions of his fall, o'erwhelmed with floods and whirlwinds of tempestuous fire, he soon discerns. And weltering by his side, one next himself in power, and next in crime, long after known in Palestine. Guys, I love the internal rhyme there. It's one of my favorite lines. And named Beelzebub, to whom the archenemy, and thence in heaven called Satan, with bold words breaking the horrid silence thus began. Now, if you recognize the name Beelzebub from Scripture, then you know it's the Lord of the Flies. That's right, you read his autobiography when you were a freshman. Anyone? No? Okay. Well, it's because you didn't read it. Lord of the Flies, that was that book about the kids on the island? Yeah.
Because at the end of it, the boar's head is like covered in flies.
Right. And Simon's your Christ figure, and he's talking to that boar's head covered in flies. That's his temptation in the desert. That's his Jesus moment. Well, anyway, in the Scripture, that's just another name for the devil. But what Milton's doing here is he's going to take all these different names for different gods in the land of Canaan, and he's going to adopt those names as names for his demons. And part of it goes into identity. Notice he doesn't tell us what Beelzebub's name was in heaven. He doesn't even tell us what Satan's name was in heaven, because they have lost their heavenly identity. Satan just means the adversary, the stumbling block. That's what his name means. So it's more a title or a term than even a name. But they've been stripped of that. What's great about the opening of Satan's speech here is it's like he's going to put up a front. Okay, he's going to pretend that, you guys know that meme of that humanoid dog sitting in a kitchen where everything's on fire? And he says, this is okay, everything's fine, I'm good with this. That's who Satan's going to be. But first he's going to go, oh crap, everything's on fire. And so he looks at Beelzebub and he says, if thou beest he, but oh, how fallen. How changed from him who in the happy realms of light, clothed with transcendent brightness, didst outshine myriads though bright. The angels, the closer they are to God, the holier they are, the more brightly they shine. Now, what's the origin of the angelic light? Where does that light come from?
Heaven.
What do you mean by heaven?
Yeah.
The angels are not many suns. They're not sources of light themselves. They reflect the light of God. They're like the moon. So what Satan is pointing out here is Beelzebub outshone myriads of angels who themselves were very bright. So Beelzebub was very close to God. And Satan, of course, was Lucifer, right? The light bearer himself. So Satan is shocked here. If he whom mutual league United thoughts and counsels, equal hope and hazard in the glorious enterprise. That was their attempt to take heaven. Joined with me once, now misery hath joined in equal ruin. Into what pit thou seest, from what height fallen? So much the stronger proved he with his thunder. Look at how Milton mixes in this Greek mythology. He's equated God with Zeus. And I always read these lines with a little bit of irony. You know, Satan and Beelzebub think themselves like the gods of Greece. And guys, do you know why Zeus is the king of the gods in Greece? You know how he became king? Well, no, he got the sky.
He killed his dad.
Well, he defeated his father. Now, I can't remember, does he actually? No, he, like, Kronos lives on, just defeated, right? Well, do you know how Kronos became king of the Titans? Well, he castrated his dad. Yeah, same difference, right?
He castrated him, and then he killed him.
Okay, fine.
Olivia,
There's a prophecy that Zeus will have a son who will repeat the cycle. Right? So there's this idea that, you know, the gods are not, I see it, the gods are not incapable of being defeated. Okay? And other gods can conspire against them. And that's the vantage that Satan is going to take. Go ahead, Andrew.
The video game series, The God of War, that's actually where that comes from, that prophecy.
The god of war?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm unfamiliar with the series. I'm not surprised. I'm old.
But the series is old, too. But anyway.
I'm going to say the last console that I spent any significant time with was the PS2 and the N64.
That's when the first one came out.
Is that right?
It was
Okay.
PS2.
All right. Well, I stand corrected. I just didn't know it. Until then, this is my point. Who knew the force of those dire arms? As Christians, we're reading this going, he's God. You're an idiot. Who knew the force of those dire arms? Are you kidding me right now? Yet not for those, nor what the potent victor in his rage can else inflict, do I repent or change. Though changed in outward luster, that fixed mind in high disdain from sense of injured merit, that with the mightiest raised me to contend. Into the fierce contention brought along innumerable forces of spirits armed, that durst dislike his reign, and me preferring his utmost power with adverse power opposed, in dubious battle on the plains of heaven, and shook his throne. I love the word dubious there. Satan thinks he could have won the battle. Again, we're supposed to be going, are you an idiot? We're supposed to think that the answer is yes. What though the field be lost? And remember, he's floating in the lake of fire as he says all this. All is not lost. The unconquerable will and study of revenge, immortal hate, and courage never to submit or yield. And what is else not to be overcome? That glory never shall his wrath or might extort from me. This is a tricky series of lines coming up. See if you can figure out the irony in it. To bow and sue for grace with suppliant knee and deify his power, who from the terror of this arm so late doubted his empire. Oh, that were low indeed. That were an ignominy and shame beneath this downfall, since by fate the strength of gods in this imperial substance cannot fail. Since through experience of this great event, in arms not worse, in foresight much advanced, we may with more successful hope resolve to wage by force or guile eternal war irreconcilable to our grand foe, who now triumphs, and in the excess joy sole reigning holds the tyranny of heaven. What's ironic about Satan's lines regarding deifying God?
To make God good, but he's already good.
He's already God. To deify is to make a God. Now, a little bit trickier. What's in the background of that? What does Satan think about himself If he says, if I take the knee and bow and sue for grace, I will deify his power. He thinks very highly of himself. Very highly indeed. Are we supposed to take seriously the idea that God doubted his empire during this battle? Probably not. Did you see the continued reference to himself as a god in the Greek understanding of gods? Or the Nordic understanding of gods? And how about the use of the word tyranny? What do we use the word tyranny or tyrant to mean?
Unjust leader.
An oppressive government, sir?
Unjust leader.
Unjustly earned? A dictator, an autocrat? That's Satan's perspective. So spake the apostate angel, though in pain. I like how Milton's going to tell us about the image that Satan wants to project, while also telling us where he is internally. You know what apostate means? It was a vocab word when you were in the 10th grade. A renegade. A rebel. Usually used in application to somebody who has left a religion or something wherein loyalty would be the utmost. So thus spake the apostate angel, though in pain, vaunting aloud, but racked with deep despair. And him thus answered soon his bold compeer. O Prince, O chief of many throned powers, that led the embattled seraphim to war, under thy conduct, and in dreadful deeds fearless, endangered heaven's perpetual king, and put to proof his high supremacy, whether upheld by strength or chance or fate. Zero in on that. Beelzebub says God won because of strength or chance or fate. If God won because of strength, then what does that mean? He could be beaten, right? The demons could regroup and become stronger. If God won because of chance, what does that mean? Yeah, he got lucky that time. Now, this third one, fate, this one takes a little bit more, maybe. What does it mean? What does it mean if God was fated to win this battle? No. I mean, yes, but there's more to it than that.
There wasn't his power.
What do you mean?
Like God couldn't control the outcome. It's just like that's how it was. Like that's how it was supposed to be.
Which means that there's something greater than God. That means that God himself is subject to fate. Which we're supposed to read this and think, these guys still don't get it. They don't get it. Too well I see and rue the dire event, that with sad overthrow and foul defeat hath lost us heaven. And all this mighty host, now host means army, and horrible destruction laid thus low as far as gods and heavenly essences can perish. For the mind and spirit remains invincible, and vigor soon returns, though all our glory extinct in happy state here swallowed up in endless misery. There we are at line 143. But what if he, our conqueror, whom I now of force believe almighty, since no less than such could have o'erpowered such force as ours, have left us this our spirit and strength entire strongly to suffer and support our pains, that we may so suffice his vengeful ire, or do him mightier service as his thralls by right of war, whate'er his business be here in the heart of hell to work in fire, or do his errands in the gloomy deep. What can it then avail, though yet we feel strength undiminished, or eternal being to undergo eternal punishment? Now, pause. This is Beelzebub expressing some concern. He says, we're defeated, as far as heavenly essences can be defeated, and yet, he says, he says that they're not dead. Line 146. God left us this, our spirit and strength entire. They feel like themselves despite being overthrown. And he can think of only two reasons why God would leave them intact. Did you pick up either of those arguments? Cade?
When I first read this, I had no idea what he was talking about. But
Yeah.
then I looked at some summaries, and I saw that one of the explanations was God intended to leave them feeling as normal as possible so that they can endure all the punishment in full force.
Yes. That's his first shot. Jackson?
I have a question.
Okay.
Is there a reason for him using so much alliteration here? I didn't realize it until now, but almost every line is a bunch of alliteration.
Yeah, it's a good question. It may just be for the poetry of it. It may be kind of to pull in, because it's blank verse, of course. And so the alliteration seems to be like a bit of a throwback to the Anglo-Saxon alliterative, and the Middle English alliterative revival. So it does kind of pull the lines together. Yes?
God also could want them to fight for him.
Okay, so you got that word thrall.
Yeah. Or sort of like he basically enslaves them to fight for him.
Yeah, a thrall is a slave. And so that's what Beelzebub is saying. Either he wants us to hurt more, or he wants us to be his slaves, and that's why he's left us put together. I mean, just think about it. If you're unconscious, there's a reason why we use anesthesia when we have surgery. If you're unconscious, you don't feel it. And Beelzebub is saying God wants us to feel it. Yes, sir.
It also says, or do his errands in the gloomy deep. Is that also something
Yeah, work for him. Be his slave.
like do his dirty work?
Yeah, do the dirty work. He's going to use us for something. Okay. Anything else before we continue? I liked your point, Mr. Smith, about the alliteration. I really, really like Satan's response here, and it always makes me think about the same thing we talked about with Redemption, that poem. And we talked about the two opposing views of power. Power means either serving or being served. Or I guess you could say it could mean serving or dominating, depending on your perspective. And the biblical concept is of service. And yet, we can see, because I'm a geek, I was thinking about it this weekend, actually. If you went to Mass this weekend, the reading was the Temptations of Christ. And, in those temptations, the second temptation, Satan shows Jesus all the kingdoms of the world at once. And he says, I can give all of these to you because they've been given to me. I can give you power over all of them. That's power to dominate, right? And yet Jesus says, I've come to serve, not to be served. So there's this question about what true weakness is. We saw this with Dream of the Root as well, right? Or Christ is turned into a warrior, but he's a warrior not who rains down blows on his opponent, but rather takes those blows for others. And so here we have Satan saying, fallen cherub, to be weak is miserable, doing or suffering. And remember, that a dying man on a cross, that is our God. And depending upon how you define power and leadership, that is weakness. Although I do think that it takes more power to let that third grade kid defeat you in some one-on-one 7-foot goal basketball. To give that to him. then that's more of an exercise of power than just, packing it back in his face every time he shoots. Fallen share it. To be weak is miserable, doing or suffering. But if this be sure, to do aught good never will be our task, but ever to do ill our sole delight, as being the contrary to his high will whom we resist. If then his providence, that's God's plan, out of our evil seek to bring forth good, our labor must be to pervert that end, and out of good still to find means of evil. Now you'll see buried in this the idiomatic idea that God can bring goodness out of evil. And here's Satan saying we've got to make sure he can't do that. Which oftentimes may succeed, so as perhaps shall grieve him if I fail not, and disturb his inmost counsels from their destined aim. But see, the angry victor hath recalled his ministers of vengeance and pursuit back to the gates of heaven. The sulphurous hail shot after us in storm o'erblown hath laid the fiery surge that from the precipice of heaven received us falling. And the thunder, winged with red lightning and impetuous rage, perhaps hath spent his shafts, and ceaseless now to bellow through the vast and boundless deep. It's a little bit confusing the first time you read it, but what he's just described is the creation of hell. That as the demons are being chased from heaven by these thunderbolts, the sulphurous hail shoots through and past them and creates hell as they fall. And he's saying, you know what? I don't know why, but God's not shooting at us right now.
Where did the idea of a hot hell come from? Because wasn't it like cold with like Nordic?
Well, Dante makes it cold.
Or,
Yeah, the very center of it's cold for him because Satan's flapping his damned wings. That's a pun. Were you going to reference some other?
I think like it's hell like the Nordic mythology, or it's cold. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Same with Greek.
Same what?
Same with Greek.
So where does our this concept?
Jesus uses the Valley of Ghinnom as his description of hell. And the Valley of Ghinnom was right outside Jerusalem, and it was where it was like a landfill, but they would burn it. They'd burn their refuse. And so it was hot, it smelled bad, it was smoky, and so it assaults all of your senses if you're right in the middle of it. That's Gehenna.
Okay.
That gets called Gehenna. So he uses that imagery to describe hell. And, was it Luke 17? I can't remember. There's a story of Lazarus and the rich man. And Lazarus is a homeless man, and they both die at the same time. And Jesus says that the Lazarus, the poor man, winds up in the bosom of Abraham. That's what we would call Hades, or the upper level of Sheol. And the rich man winds up in the fiery Gehenna. Right, kind of a lower hell, or you could use the Greek Tartarus if you wanted. And if you remember the story, that's where, the rich man asks for help. He asks for even a drop of water, and Abraham says, can't do it. There's a chasm between the two of us. And the rich man says, can I go back and warn my brothers? And Father Abraham says, I'm telling you, even if someone came back from the dead, they wouldn't believe it. And that seems to be the gospel writer pointing out, like Jesus came back from the dead and no one's paying attention. Right, but there you get some of that fiery image as well. Anyone else? Okay, so we are 178. So since he's not firing at us right now, let us not slip the occasion. Whether scorn or satiate fury, he's satisfied. Yield it from our foe. Seest thou yon dreary plain, forlorn and wild, the seat of desolation, void of light, save what the glimmering of these livid flames casts pale and dreadful? He's pointing out pandemonium. Remember that Pan demon, all the demons? Pandemonium is the name of his palace. And there it is. He says, let's go over there. We have a war council. Thither let us tend from off the tossing of these fiery waves, their rest, if any rest can harbor there, and reassembling our afflicted powers, that's the army, consult how we may henceforth most offend our enemy. This is his battle plan. Our own loss repair, how o'ercome this dire calamity, what reinforcement we may gain from hope, if not, what resolution from despair. Can you guys tell me in brief what he wants to discuss at his war council in Pandemonium? Can you speak up, please?
How they can fight back.
How they can fight back. More?
Where they can get reinforcements from.
Well, maybe, yeah. Someone else.
How to repair what they've lost.
Okay. Can they repair what they've lost?
Some about, like, resolution from despair.
Yeah. Do they have a chance to win? Is that one of the things we're going to talk about? Yeah. Can we win? Can we come back? But if we conclude that we cannot win, what then? He says, what resolution from despair? What does that mean? Does that mean they're going to give it up?
Like peace terms.
Peace terms?
Like, if they can't win, then what can they get from losing?
How hard can they hit? Like, they still lose, but they still like want to make an impact.
To lose worse. Better.
Yeah, lose better. They want to make an impact. Right? It's we might go down, but we're going to drag God down too if we can. It's a classic narc move, right? If I can't win, then you can't win either. Yeah, so can we come back from this? Do we have a shot at victory? And if we don't have a shot at victory, can we play the spoiler? I always think of that team in the last game of the season, playing a team that is just winning in, and you got the postseason, and we've got some like really bad team we're playing, but that bad team won only one game all season. It's like, you know what? We're going to beat you just so you can't go to the playoffs. That's what I think of with Satan. We're not going to the playoffs, but you're not going either. And to keep him out. Thus Satan, talking to his nearest mate, with head uplift above the wave, and eyes that sparkling blazed, his other parts besides, prone on the flood. This whole section just means Satan's really, 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 really big. I'm not even going to read it. He's just so big. He's bigger than Leviathan. And turn the page. And Leviathan, that creature from the Bible, not Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan, is so big. How big is he? He's so big that a Norwegian sailor once dropped anchor on him thinking he was an island. And Satan's bigger than big. So, line 209. So stretched out, huge in length, the archfiend lay, chained on the burning lake. Here's an important line. Nor ever thence had risen or heaved his head, but that the will and high permission of all ruling heaven left him at large to his own dark designs. Pause there. What does that mean? Not you. What is Milton reminding us? Nor ever thence, so the archfiend lay chained on the burning lake, nor ever thence had risen or heaved his head, but that the will and high permission of all ruling heaven left him at large to his own dark designs.
Is he reminding us that Satan might not think it, but God is letting him do all of this without interruption, like to
Yes.
plan?
Perfect. Satan thinks that he is free in a sense. acting of his own will. But what Milton wants us to remember is that God allows Satan. Even just Satan raising his head, he does by God's permission. Now, the message here to Christians is Satan is a defeated foe. He just doesn't realize it or won't accept it. Now, this is rhetorical. Why would God do this? Milton's going to tell us. Line 214. So that with reiterated crimes he might heap on himself damnation. You ever hear the idiom, give somebody enough rope? Right? This is kind of what Milton is saying here. There's no question of misunderstanding. Look at how he continues to repeat these crimes. Clearly Satan is guilty. While he saw evil to others and enraged might see how all his malice served but to bring forth infinite goodness, grace, and mercy shown on man by him seduced. Paul says, where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. And you'll recall that Satan had said, our goal will be to do aught good never, and to take any goodness that God tries to make from our ill and not allow it to be good. Well, here's Milton saying, sucks to his asthma, that's exactly what's going to happen. And while man receives increased grace, on himself, on Satan, treble confusion, wrath, and vengeance poured. That treble there is not a musical reference. It's a reference to triple. Now, we've talked about this before, but you might remember in French, the word for very is trace, rooted in three. And so English does a similar thing. We would say here that Satan is thrice damned or thrice confused. Okay? But Milton is using treble instead. You guys follow me on that? Okay. Forthwith upright he rears from off the pool his mighty stature. On each hand the flames driven backwards slope their pointing spires. Just imagine jumping out of the water and the flames, coming down from his hands, dripping off him. It's a cool image. And rolled in billows leave in the mist a horrid veil. Then with expanded wings he steers his flight aloft, incumbent on the dusky air that felt unusual weight, till on dry land he lights, if it were land that ever burned was solid as the lake with liquid fire. And such appeared in hue, as when the force of subterranean wind transports a hill torn from pillars, so stuff blowing up. I want to move down to line 237. Such resting found the soul of unblessed feet. Now, I think it's in Isaiah originally, but Paul references it too. There's a line that says something like, blessed are the feet of him who proclaims the word of God on the mountaintop. So we actually have these biblical lines about feet being blessed. And now Satan's feet are unblessed. Him followed his next mate, both glorying to escape the Stygian flood as gods. There you go. Stygians are a reference to the river Styx. They think of themselves as Greek gods. And by their own recovered strength, not by the sufferance of supernal power. Now, notice, they are both glorying to have escaped the Stygian flood as gods and by their own recovered strength, not by the sufferance of supernal power. Is this the narrator telling us what they've done? Or is it the thoughts of Satan and Beelzebub? The narrator, guys, told us on line 210 that Satan is chained to the lake and cannot even lift his head without God's permission. He did not escape the Stygian flood as a god and under his own power. He thinks that he did. Do you see that? Do you guys see that? And then here's his farewell speech. Is this the region, this the soil This the climb, said then the lost archangel. This the seat that we must change for heaven. This mournful gloom for that celestial light. Be it so. Since he who now is sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Farthest from him is best, whom reason hath equaled, force hath made supreme above his equals. Who's equal? Who's equal in reason? Be it so, since he who now is sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Farthest from him is best, whom reason hath equaled. Who's he talking about?
God himself.
Correct. Satan says, I am equal to God in the mind. He whom reason hath equaled. Remember, Satan proclaimed himself to be like the Most High. And the only reason God is better now, God beat him. Force has made God supreme. Not God, not because of who God is. Force. Farewell, happy fields, where joy forever dwells. What's that happy fields there an allusion to? Elysium. Yeah. The Isle of the Blessed, if you want to take it a step further. It's just Greek mythology and where the heroes go. It's paradise. Hail, horrors. Hail, infernal world, and thou profoundest hell. Receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. That's kind of a famous idea. You know, it's interesting. I'm reading these reflections on A Man for All Seasons, and I think one guy brings up this great point. Like, we laud Thomas More for sticking to his guns, for sticking to his principles. And yet here, Satan's doing the same thing. And we praise More, and we're going, Satan, you're an idiot. I think the difference is that More doesn't actively try to hurt other people with his. He actually tries to remove himself from those situations. But I don't know. It's just an interesting idea. He says, the mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. That's another great 2 lines, and you might ponder whether that's true or not. What matter where, if I be still the same, and what I should be, all but less than he, whom thunder hath made greater? Here at least we shall be free. The Almighty hath not built here for his envy, will not drive us hence. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice, to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. The footnote is good. An ironic echo of Odyssey, where the shade of Achilles tells Odysseus, it is better to be a farmhand on earth than king among the dead. And I often, with that idea, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, I'll think about like a kid who refuses to do his chores and gets confined to his bedroom. No electronics. Fun, I'd rather sit in here anyway than be out there and rake those stupid leaves. I don't know. Is it really? Is it better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven? Milton doesn't think so. But it's all Satan's God, so he's got to go with it. Can a mind make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven? You think so? Yeah.
I think like with maybe like a earthly comparison of heaven or hell, but not the real thing.
I think it's good. Because sometimes we think about heaven, sometimes it's scary. like you're there forever. It's like, what are you gonna do forever?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that, I used to think that too. I learned that that's a misunderstanding of eternity, and that helped me.
Yeah.
But no, I totally get that. It makes me think actually of that last line from 2 Althea. Stone walls do not a prison make, nor iron bars a cage. Same thing. In that piece, we're going, oh, this dude's got something going on here. Right? If my mind is free and my soul is free, but now Satan says this, and I want to be like, nah, dog. Hell's hell. But I think you're right. I think to an extent, like our perception of things can make the experience more hellish or more enjoyable. That's a really interesting take, by the way, Mr. Kosei. We've got about 90 seconds. Anything else real quick about this reading from Paradise Lost? Yes, sir.
How come God doesn't just I think it was mentioned, but I missed it. But how come God doesn't just snap his fingers and get rid of all, like Satan's army and
That's a really good question. I don't have a quick answer to that. Now, do you mean in the story or
both?
what we would say as Christians?
Both. Yeah, and the story, but also
Yeah, the Revelation does give us the idea that at the end of time, Satan and hell will cease to exist. But I don't know. I need to ponder that. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.